The giraffe's little tail goes. That's awesome.
Yeah, there he is. And we're live. We want to welcome you to the Zoo Podcast. My name is Jeffrey Sisk. And we're delighted tonight. We're going to have a special guest with us named Terri Hasdorff. I've known Terri for quite a while. We're friends. But Terri was a former congressional candidate. She's an executive level leader. She's got over 20 years experience working in that intersection between faith and politics. And she started in 91 at the White House Office of Public Engagement, bringing faith leaders and nonprofits and all of that together. And it's a joy to have Terri on tonight. We're coming on to talk about an event tomorrow called First Landing. Terri, welcome to the Zoo Podcast.
Thanks so much, Jeff. Great to be with you.
All right. So what are the most important things in front of you right now that are important to Terri Hasdorff?
I'm really, I think, most focused right now on our country and our future and these elections that are coming up. I think this is a time where we're at a crossroads for the country. And, I wrote a book called Running into the Fire. It's about why more Christians need to be involved in politics. And it's really geared towards equipping the body of Christ with information that they can use that's practical on how to get involved and make a real difference in the political structure. Because right now, we are in an all hands on deck moment. And everyone is needed. And we don't have the luxury of sitting back and just thinking, oh, somebody else is going to do it. We're in a place right now where we really are in a battle for the soul of the country and for the future, for our kids and everything else. And so that's really what's important to me right now and what I'm the most focused on.
Yeah, and we pray about that every Saturday. Terri and I are on a prayer call together. We've been doing that a long time. And we do pray about this country. So what should Christian Americans that love our country and Constitution, what should they be doing right now? We're in this big election year.
Well, Jeff, 67% of Americans identify as Christians, and that's really exciting. I mean, when you realize that Christians are the majority, and yet so often Christians have shirked back from the mountain of government and been like, oh, it's corrupt or it's dirty, and I just don't know that I want to get involved in that. And so what I'm doing right now is putting out a call to action. And I'm saying, okay, first and foremost, you need to pray. That's important, but you can't just stop there. You need to be thinking about what can I do? Voting is super critical, but there's more than one way to vote. You vote at the ballot box, but then you also can vote with your time, with your influence, and with your wallet. There are a lot of good candidates that are down ballot from even the presidential ballot box. And, you have to think about like, okay, who is running for Congress right now? Who are some of the races that maybe are not getting as much attention because so much focus is on the presidential election? And getting behind those kinds of leaders, there are some great people running for office. They just need support.
Yeah, and I tell you what, I know you're involved in the National Republican Women's Forum, and I had Nancy Schultz on earlier today on an interview, and she told me a stunning statistic, and I couldn't wait to get you on the air. I wanted to ask you what you thought about it. I was not aware that women by a wide margin outvote men, and I found that so interesting, and I'm sure that's part of the reason you're involved in that particular thing, correct?
Well, absolutely. I'm the chair of the Republican Women's Federal Forum. It's a great honor. I took over from Barbara Grassley as our previous chair. Nancy Schultz is on the advisory council, and she's incredible. We have some amazing people that are part of that forum. It was started 50 years ago by Betty Ford, Barbara Bush, and a whole bunch of congressional wives. And we're now looking at scaling the forum and taking it nationwide. We have our first state chapter in the state of Kentucky, and we use that as a pilot, and now we're going to be replicating that across the United States. But women decide elections. Kellyanne Conway talks about how I think her quote is that every presidential election since 1964 has been decided by women. Women are always the swing vote. Women are always ones that are targeted in the presidential races, especially because they many times are the ones that will get out and vote and that influence others to vote. And so that's why, in particular, women are so critical, and that's something that our focus has got to be really shifted towards paying attention to those demographics. And typically in the past, the soccer mom moniker has been what's been thrown around, and yet in my research, a lot of women today don't fit that exactly. That is kind of an antiquated term, and so you
Right.
have a lot of women that are feeling like, okay, I want something that speaks to me and that's tailored to the concerns that I have. And so that's something that we're really looking at through the forum, and we're doing things that are highly interactive and targeted towards getting more women politically engaged on the Republican side.
Yeah. And has anybody unpacked, what is driving that women outvote men? Has anybody unpacked that to try and figure out why is that? I mean, that's just such an amazing statistic.
Mm-hmm. I don't have specifics on it, but what I can tell you from my gut is that women are many times the ones who are focusing so heavily on what is the future going to look like for my kids, for my family. How are these policies going to impact me down the road as a mom or as a wife? And it many times I think men are so focused on their careers, and in the past it's been the women that were at home thinking about the family and the kids, but now women are working more and more. And so I think it's something where both men and women are starting to pay a lot more attention politically, but the women in particular are the ones who tend to spend more time focusing on what they can do to get involved, especially with voting.
Yeah, and I think in particular there was I think the stat from Nancy was the 19 to 30-year-old, is an important swath of the country that decides those elections. And I have heard Kellyanne Conway talk about that before, but it just kind of goes in one ear and out the next, until she started really digging into that with me yesterday, and I just found it very, very interesting. Um, so, are there things happening this year? I know in 2016, for Donald Trump, there were bus tours and, all for women and all those things. Is that happening this year? Or is there anything like that going on this year?
Oh, there's a lot of events happening, nationwide, but I think the focus right now is just getting, through all of the primaries that have been happening across the country, and now shifting into the convention, which will be coming up in July. And then you'll have a lot of focus after that on the general election, and it's going to be, a very heated time. The trials that are going on with President Trump are obviously taking up a lot of airtime. But once we move into July and the convention is about to start, I think that's where it's really going to be the focus of a lot of people's attention.
Right. And so let me ask you about this also. I'm 60 years old. The America that I grew up in, Democrats and Republicans, we might have differed about size of government, policy issues, but everybody agreed on the basic things: freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, the right to bear arms, everything in our Constitution and Bill of Rights. We've seen a party, we've seen the Democrat Party move towards communism and socialism. And so when I look at elections now, those things are not compatible with the United States Constitution. And I just wondered if you had any thoughts on that, and, how we got here, and, if we ever think we can untangle, and get back to where, there is a left here that is more like the John F. Kennedy Democrats, right?
Well, I grew up hearing about blue dog Democrats, and when I worked on Capitol Hill, that they were still in existence, and now those folks have been eliminated. Blue dog Democrats were the more conservative Democrats, and
Right.
they've been replaced by basically hardcore socialists and far left leaning Democrats. And that's really troubling because, you have the socialist mindset that is taking hold more and more across the Democratic Party. And there are a lot of political leaders that are being elected on the county and local level that are more and more backed by like the Socialist Democrats of America, which is a group that is growing by leaps and bounds. And this is something that should be extraordinarily troubling to anyone who is a Christian and who is conservative, because our freedoms are at stake. And one of those freedoms in particular is our religious freedom.
Right.
Socialism is a precursor to communism. Communism and socialism at its core is about replacing God with government and freedom with tyranny. The enemy of socialism is religion. They do not mince any words about that. You look at what's happened in communist countries around the world, and anyone with a strong religious background is typically canceled. So it's something that is taking hold here in America. But here's the great news. As I started off with a statistic, 67% of Americans identify as Christians. Gallup says it's 68%. So, that's the majority still. The body of Christ has an enormous ability to rise up and make a huge difference. If we move the needle, this is a staggering statistics. 90 million Christians are eligible to vote. Half of them don't even show up at the polls, even if they're registered to vote. And 15 million Christians are not even registered to vote at all. So if the numbers move even slightly on that can make a huge difference in some of these elections where you have, I was with a member of Congress from Michigan a few days ago. He won by 1,600 votes, third tightest race in America, and he's now up for reelect. And Congressman John James, amazing guy, and in Michigan. And you look at 1,600 votes. I mean, come on, we can't get 1,600 people to turn out in a race that tight with somebody who believes all the right things, checks all the right boxes. We're going to be held to account for this one day. And we've got to think about, we're called to seek the welfare of the city that we're in. That's scripture. We're called to rule and reign. We're called to be salt and light. We don't get a pass. And even if we know that, like, okay, running for office is not something that I feel like God has ever called me to do, that's fine. But that doesn't mean that you just go, okay, well, I'm just going to, stay out. No, you need to get behind the people that are called.
Right.
And so, there's some wonderful people out there that are working in government. It's not all the house of cards, but they just need more support. And so that's what I'm putting out a call to action for is getting behind these good candidates, doing your homework, getting out and voting, and getting others to register to vote.
Yeah, and what Terri just said is really important. If you're in the sound of our voices, tonight, if you're not registered to vote, look that up. You're in your county, go ahead and do that. It's really easy to do, and just show up. Voting is an easy thing to go do. You should be exercising that right. And the last thing I'll say on that about voting, don't let them trick you on the issues. They'll put these things out here like abortion or, whatever it might be. Your litmus test on a candidate should be, if you want there to be an American Republic in 100 years, it's like the one, that we've had for over 2 centuries, is, do they support the Constitution? Do they support the Bill of Rights? And yes, then look for alignment on the issues you care about. But at the core of it, you do not want socialism. You do not want communism. We want our children to have freedom. And everybody that's listening here tonight, I want your great, 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 great grandchildren to have freedom, just like I had growing up.
That's right.
So we have to do that. We have to get out and vote. We have to participate, and don't be tricked. And, ask these candidates, get them to speak it out loud. What's interesting to me, I noticed in 2020, Joe Biden put on his website every policy that he was going to support if he got elected. I had friends I talked to that I would tell them, he's going to do this, he's going to do this, he's going to do this. They were like, no, he's not. And I would send them the website link. and they wouldn't go take a look at it. And he told people what he was going to do, and he's followed through,
Yes.
with those bad policies. So look these candidates up, figure out what they stand for. And if they're not for American values and they're not for your values, as a Christian, vote for somebody else.
Agreed, Jeff. And it really is a matter of just doing your homework, thinking about like, okay, sometimes the primary is the election in a lot of states. I ran for Congress in Alabama in 2020. For my race, that was the case. The chances of a Democrat getting elected in that particular district were very slim at that time. And so, on paper, all of the candidates looked exactly alike. We checked every box, but behind the scenes, we couldn't have been more different.
Yeah.
And, it's hard sometimes for people to, if you just do a surface glance, know the difference. But what I tell people and what I talk about in my book is that you can't vote just like you're ordering food off of a fast food menu. You can't wait
Right.
until 2 days before the election and go, well, who has the most billboards up around town? Or
Right.
who, do my friends like? You really need to do your homework and then find people who are really politically astute and who track the issues and who have the same values as you, and ask them, who are you supporting and why? And then do your own homework and dig in based off of what they have recommended. You can't just go based off of other people and their thoughts, but you can, find out some like-minded groups that are maybe in your area, maybe conservative organizations that are tracking some of these races, and find out what it is that they are, focusing in on. And then you can do your own homework from there. And that makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, and the other part of that is this is another crazy stat that came out of Nancy. She was a plethora of stats today. Is that only 8 or 9% of people talk about politics at all? In America, amongst themselves or amongst family members or their friends. I think part of that is when I came along, you could not graduate from high school if you didn't have American history and civics. And civics, for people that don't know what that is the course you had to take that you learned everything about how our government works inside and out. And they've removed that from a lot of schools now. And I think this led to people like, what was Jesse Waters that used to be on Bill O'Reilly, and he would be wandering the streets of New York, and people didn't even know who the president was or the vice president or anything about their representatives. And, if you care about it, Ronald Reagan said it, we're one generation at any given time away from losing freedom. We don't want to be the generation that loses that, right?
That's absolutely right. And I'm so glad you brought up civics, because that's something that I really advocate for as well. I have a friend who's out in California and she teaches civics at her church. She uses the book, The 5,000 Year Leap, which is an amazing book. And this is something where so many churches have been so, afraid to get involved in anything that is political. Well, guess what? Civics is just training in good government. It's politically neutral. The IRS is never going to come after you if you're a pastor for teaching civics.
Right.
And so that's something where that at a bare minimum, if you can at least do that, that's a major thing that needs to be brought back, because our kids are not learning this. And understanding what good government is all about is a core foundation to our country. And so I highly recommend that book if you haven't read it, and get your church to take it on and teach it in a Sunday school class or in a side class that they sponsor.
I hadn't thought about that, but churches, many pastors listening tonight, that is an excellent place because it's not happening in the schoolhouse like it used to.
That's right.
So we have a lot of adults now. So don't just make it the kids, do it to the adults also, because there's a lot of people that are grown now that have no idea about how all this works.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great idea. I mean, that's an idea that I get excited about thinking about us doing that. The other thing is there's some great courses like if you look up Hillsdale College, they have a lot of free courses on the Constitution, our history and all that. And some of it is really, really good. 10, 12 years ago, I used to put some of that on, on the air. and it was a lot of fun, and it's very educational. So that's a great source for people. But just learn and know about your government, know about the issues, register to vote. Let's go out there and put people in office this year that love this country, that will support and defend that Constitution, and propel us into the future, and see if we can get some of the evil out of Washington, D.C. that's there now.
You're absolutely right, Jeff. And, it's time where it really can seem hopeless and dark. And I think a lot of people feel like, well, what can I do? I'm just one person. I love it when people say that to me, because I'm like, you know what? There is so much you can do. We live in a country where we have an enormous ability to make a difference. And, I've had people say to me, well, I'm just a mom. What can I do? And I think, oh my goodness, I'll take a fired up, passionate mama bear any day of the week over some political hack, because guess what? That mama bear cares. She cares about her kids, and she will take the time and energy to dig in and make a real difference. And so part of the reason why I wrote this book that I've been mentioning, Running into the Fire, is, it's to equip you with information and tools about how you personally can make a difference. There's like a list of 20 action steps in the book that you can get started on today that will help you make a difference. There's resources in the back where you can plug in for more information if you need more training. One of the things that you mentioned, Hillsdale College is an excellent source of information, but there's also things like the Leadership Institute and others that are just wonderful. And, one of the areas that we really need to think about too is, what can we do to personally get behind the right kind of candidates? Because there's always going to be somebody running. And if we aren't there, it creates a vacuum. And guess what? A lot of the people that will step in are probably not the kind of people that we want. It may have, an enormous impact for you to just do. If you do nothing more than maybe give $25, show up and vote and tell all your friends, believe it or not, that can have a huge impact on a candidate's election. I know, after having run for office personally myself, every dime counts, every vote counts. And like I just mentioned, there was a race in Michigan with 1,600 votes.
Yeah,
that's such a small number. Surely we can generate that.
Yeah, and we just don't want those races being way too close, and especially even with the national candidates. If all the polls are saying, "Oh, my guy's going to win," and all that, don't listen to that. Go vote anyway, because your votes make a difference. I know it doesn't feel that way sometimes, but they do make a difference. And Terri, I've got a copy of that book on the screen here for people. Where do they go to get this book?
So you can go to my website, godovergovernment.com. And if you buy the book through that website, I'll sign it. Any book order that comes through that site, I personally sign the book. So would love to have you check it out, godovergovernment.com. You can sign up for my newsletter, put out information about things that are useful tools and information resources for people. And the book is just chock full. And the book is really geared for not only people that want to learn more, but also as a tool to give to a friend or a neighbor, as a conversation starter to help them want to learn more and get involved too.
All right, that sounds good. And I was going to put that out there at the end, and we'll talk a little bit more about where people can find more information about what you're doing in the forum. So I'll tell you what, let's do now. Let's talk a little bit about First Landing. This is happening. All right, hang on a second. I had somebody trying to call in that doesn't know I'm on the air. I've never had that happen before since I went back on. That's pretty funny. All right, so let's talk a little bit about First Landing. And, for those of you out there that, have watched this show, especially the last couple of episodes, I'll give a very brief explanation, because I know there's people that are watching the show that don't know anything about this. So a year ago, I was at an event. Terri was there. It was called 1607 First Landing. And let me tell you what the history of this is so you'll understand it. In 1607, the first people hit the shore in Cape Henry, Virginia. And, this is about 30 years before the Mayflower. And they were dying. Whether it was disease, hunger, clashes with Indians, they were dying. pastor takes them out to the beach, and they pray, and they pray this prayer to God. They made a covenant with God. I'm going to tell you why that's important is because at the time this happened, the colony really was all of North America, right? So they prayed to God, if you will save us, we will build a Christian nation here. And beyond that, we'll also build, we'll teach our children to be lights of Jesus Christ to the world. And I tell you what, the rest is history because a Christian nation was founded here. And there's been no nation that has had an impact on the world for Jesus Christ other than America in those 2 centuries. Now, this event a year ago was we gathered on the beach at Cape Henry and we reaffirmed those covenants with God, asking for forgiveness for, falling away from that and all those things. And it was a very special event. A lot of great people came. Glenn Beck, he brought historian David Barton. It was just a really, really good event. There is a website for this. I'll bring it up here in a minute. But Terri is involved in this. This is tomorrow, and we're going to tell you how you can watch it because it's sold out. But anyway, Terri, tell us about what you're doing with this event and what it means to you. What do you think we should take away from First Landing?
Sure. Well, it really is a time where we need to get back to the biblical foundations of the country and to think about what it is that we as Americans were founded on and how we are now rapidly moving away from that. You have to think about where you've been to really understand where you're going sometimes. And I think that this is a really important moment of reflection and recalibrating and looking at the spiritual foundations of the country and making sure that we realign with what it is that we were originally founded on. So tomorrow we're going to be in Richmond, Virginia at the governor's offices, and we're going to be doing this amazing event to have a time of prayer and hear from some incredible speakers, and you're not going to want to miss it. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, and let me see if I can get this pulled up here. Had it before. Here we go. You can go to firstlanding1607.com. I had been giving out this address in Richmond, Virginia. It's actually at the governor's office. But, like I said, I was told this afternoon it's sold out. But you can go to this website tomorrow, and this is from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And you can watch a live stream of this event. And I would urge you, this was very special what happened last year. I was honored to be there. And I think if you're able to do this, and watch this live stream, I think it's something that'll be great to be a part of.
Very much so.
All right. Well, Terri Hasdorff, where do people really find out about everything that you're doing? Is it on that website that you gave out?
Yeah, that's the best place, godovergovernment.com. That's the best place to look at what's happening with the book. And we'll be providing updates through that website. Sign up for the newsletter. You can go to godovergovernment.com/action and sign up for the newsletter. But if all you remember is God Over Government, that's how you find me.
All right. I think that sounds great. And Terri, thank you for coming on the Zoo to talk about what you're doing and about First Landing. And we'll be looking forward to having you back here real soon.
Thank you so much, Jeff. It was wonderful to be with you.
All right. God bless.
You too.
All right. So Terri Hasdorff, terrific person. Like I said, I've known Terri for, quite a while. We're friends. She's amazing. You should check her book out. And like we said, absolutely check out on the First Landing website tomorrow. This is the last show that we're going to be talking about that tonight before this happens tomorrow afternoon. So we hope you can be there. And I am positive, I don't know this for sure, but I am positive you should be able to, view that live stream for tomorrow, later after it's over. So go to that website, and I'm sure there's going to be instructions on how to do that. So, wow, it's been a busy weekend. I think we've done 5 episodes of the Zoo podcast, or at least 4 episodes in the last 48 hours. So it's been a joy to be with you. For me, being back on the air after 10 years of being away, it's very special to be here, and I'm excited about it. And as we go forward in time, we're going to uncover the truth together, about a whole wide array of topics, and we're going to figure out what we need to do to get this country back on the right track. I'm Jeffrey Sisk. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you again real soon.
Stand up from sea to shining sea, hand in hand, arm in arm, united we are proud, free and strong. Let freedom across America, let freedom ring across